The ship landed on the dark stone platform with a heavy thud. Steam hissed from its engines as the ramp lowered slowly. Commander Lyra Chen stepped out into the cold air of Nexus Prime and looked up at the massive building before her. The Galactic Apex Academy rose from the rocky ground like a mountain made of metal and glass. Its towers reached so high that clouds wrapped around them. For 12,000 years, this place had trained the deadliest warriors in the known universe. Every species that had ever conquered stars had sent their best soldiers here. And now, for the first time in history, a human was walking through its gates. Lyra carried only a small bag over her shoulder. She was 32 years old, with short black hair and dark eyes that watched everything but gave away nothing. Her Earth Defense Force uniform was simple and clean. She wore no medals, even though she had earned many. Her service record was classified at the highest level. The conclave of species had debated for 5 years before allowing humanity a single seat at the Academy. Humans were new to the galactic community. They had only discovered faster-than-light travel 40 years ago. To the ancient civilizations that ruled the stars, humanity was like a child who had just learned to walk, but humanity wanted respect. They wanted a place at the table. So they sent Lyra Chen. She walked through the main entrance and found herself in a massive hall filled with alien cadets. They turned to look at her, and she felt their eyes like weights pressing down on her shoulders. A Vorax warrior stood to her left. He was 8 feet tall with muscular arms and an exoskeleton that looked like dark red armor. His mandibles clicked as he studied her with compound eyes. Behind him, his friends laughed at something one of them said. Lyra did not need to understand their language to know they were laughing at her. To her right, a group of Kethali moved past her without a glance. They were tall and thin, with pale blue skin and spines running down their backs. Those spines held enough venom to kill a dozen humans in seconds. They were one of the most feared species in the galaxy. A Sundari floated near the ceiling, its body like a jellyfish made of light. It was a telepath, able to read minds and crush thoughts with a single pulse of mental energy. As Lyra walked beneath it, she felt something brush against her consciousness. The Sundari was testing her, poking at her mind like a curious child poking a strange insect. Lyra pushed back gently. The Sundari made a surprised sound and floated away. She found the registration desk and gave her name. The alien behind the desk was small and gray with too many eyes. It looked at her for a long moment, then handed her a data pad. "Your quarters are in Section 12. It said in a flat voice. "Your equipment will be delivered tomorrow. Training begins at dawn." Section 12 was on the far edge of the Academy grounds. It took her 30 minutes to walk there. Her room was small and cold, with a window that looked out at nothing but rock and sky. The bed was hard, designed for species with exoskeletons. The lights flickered every few minutes. Lyra set down her bag and sat on the bed. She was not surprised. She had expected this. They wanted her to fail. They wanted her to quit. They wanted to prove that humans did not belong here. She smiled to herself and began to unpack. The first month was hard. The instructors pushed her to her limits every single day. They made her run courses designed for species with 4 legs. They made her fight training robots built to challenge warriors with armored skin. They made her solve tactical problems while being bombarded with psychic interference. The other cadets watched her struggle and felt satisfied. They saw what they expected to see. Humans came from Earth, a planet with moderate gravity and gentle weather. Humans had soft skin that tore easily. Humans had bones that broke under pressure. Humans lived short lives and died from simple diseases. What the aliens did not see was what was happening inside Lyra's body and mind. Every night, her muscles repaired themselves and grew stronger. Her bones developed tiny fractures and healed denser than before. Her reflexes sharpened. Her endurance increased. This was what humans did. This was what millions of years of evolution had built them to do on Earth. Humans had not been the strongest animals. They had not been the fastest. They had not had claws or fangs or venom. But they had something else. They had the ability to keep going when everything else stopped. They could run for hours under a burning sun, chasing prey until it collapsed from exhaustion. They could survive injuries that would kill other creatures. They could adapt to any environment, any challenge, any threat. The aliens did not know this. They had not studied human history. They did not know about the wars, the plagues, the ice ages, the famines. They did not know that humanity had crawled out of the mud and conquered their entire planet. Through sheer stubborn refusal to die. By the end of the second month, Lyra was keeping up with cadets who had trained their whole lives. By the end of the fourth month, she was beating some of them. The instructors noticed. They pushed harder. They gave her older equipment that broke at bad moments. They assigned her to the most dangerous training rotations. They paired her with partners who wanted to hurt her. She survived everything. The other cadets began to whisper. How was the human still standing? How was she improving so fast? What was wrong with her? Lyra heard the whispers. She said nothing. She smiled politely when they mocked her species. She helped those who would accept her help. She studied their fighting styles, their weaknesses, their fears. 6 months after her arrival, she was in the top 15% of her class. This was when Tharn Varelic decided that something had to be done. Tharn was the heir to the Vorax Dominion, one of the most powerful empires in the galaxy. He had been the top cadet for 3 years. He had never lost a fight in the Academy's combat rings. He was everything the Vorax valued: strong, brutal, and absolutely certain of his own superiority. The idea that a human might challenge his position was unacceptable. The idea that a soft, squishy creature from a backwater planet might stand among the galaxy's elite warriors was an insult to everything he believed. He began to gather allies. He reached out to the Deadliest cadets from 7 different species. He spoke to them about the natural order of things. He reminded them what their civilizations had achieved while humans were still living in caves. They called themselves the Apex Circle, and they decided that the human needed to learn her place. The first attack came on a quiet morning. Lyra was running the obstacle course on the eastern cliffs. It was a brutal path of climbing walls, swinging platforms, and narrow bridges over deep drops. She had run it 40 times before. She knew every handhold, every tricky spot, every place where the wind tried to push runners off the edge. She did not know that someone had cut the cable on the 3rd bridge. When her weight hit the middle of the bridge, the cable snapped. The platform dropped. Lyra fell. She grabbed a piece of rock jutting out from the cliff face. Her fingers screamed with pain. Her shoulders nearly pulled from their sockets. She hung there, 200 feet above sharp rocks, and looked up at the broken bridge. Not an accident. Someone had done this on purpose. She climbed back up using cracks in the cliff wall. It took her 20 minutes. When she reached the top, her hands were bleeding and her arms were shaking. But she was alive. She reported the broken cable to the instructors. They said they would investigate. They never did. 2 days later, her environmental suit failed during a training exercise on a moon with no atmosphere. The oxygen stopped flowing. The temperature dropped to freezing. She had 30 seconds before she passed out and 3 minutes before she died. Lyra tore open the suit's emergency panel with her bare hands. She found the fault in the air system. Someone had put a small device inside that blocked the oxygen flow. She ripped it out, and the suit came back to life. She kept the device. She did not report it. Over the next 2 weeks, more accidents happened. Her food was poisoned with a chemical that caused violent sickness. Her weapon jammed during a live-fire exercise and nearly got her killed. Her navigation system gave her wrong directions during a night march through dangerous territory. Each time, she survived. Each time, she learned something new about her enemies. They were testing her. They were seeing how much she could take. They were waiting for her to break. Lyra did not break. She healed. Every bruise faded. Every cut closed. Every bone that cracked grew back stronger. Her body did what human bodies had done for millions of years. It adapted. It overcame. It refused to stop. The Apex Circle grew frustrated. Their small attacks were not working. The human kept getting back up. The human kept improving. The human kept climbing the rankings. They decided to try something more direct. Lyra was walking back to her quarters one evening when she found them waiting for her. 6 cadets from 6 different species. They surrounded her in a narrow corridor where no cameras watched and no instructors would hear. Tharn Varelic stepped forward. His forearms were crossed over his massive chest. His compound eyes reflected the dim light like pools of blood. "Human," he said. His voice was deep and full of contempt. "You do not belong here. You never did. Your species is weak. Your planet is weak. You are an insult to every warrior who has ever walked these halls." Lyra looked at him calmly. "Is there a point to this speech, or do you just like hearing yourself talk?" The Kethali beside Tharn hissed. Her spines rose along her back, glistening with venom. "You should show respect, mammal. We could end you right now." "You could try," Lyra said. For a moment, nobody moved. Then Tharn laughed. It was a harsh sound, like metal scraping against stone. "Not yet," he said. "Not here, but soon. We will show the galaxy what happens to species that forget their place." They left her there in the corridor. But before he walked away, Tharn turned back. "Enjoy your sleep tonight, human. It may be the last peaceful night you have." Lyra went back to her room. She sat on her bed and thought about what had happened. She thought about the accidents. She thought about the poison and the sabotage. She thought about the look in Tharn's eyes. They were not going to stop. They would keep pushing until she left the academy or died trying to stay. For 6 months, Lyra had been careful. She had followed the rules. She had been polite and patient. She had represented humanity with dignity and restraint. But restraint had limits. That night, she began to prepare. She studied the members of the Apex Circle. She learned their fighting styles by watching recordings of their matches. She memorized their strengths and their weaknesses. She noted which injuries they had suffered in the past, and which parts of their bodies were vulnerable. The Vorax had armored skin, but their joints were soft. The Kethali were fast and deadly, but their venom spines took time to regenerate after use. The Sindari could attack mines, but they were physically fragile. Each species had evolved to be perfect predators in their own environments, but none of them had evolved to face something like a human on Earth. Humans had not survived by being the strongest. They had survived by being smart. They had learned to make tools and weapons. They had learned to work together. They had learned to study their enemies and find ways to destroy them. Lyra was going to use everything her species had learned into 100,000 years of survival. 3 days later, she returned to her quarters after a long day of training. The door was open. The lock had been broken. Inside, everything she owned had been destroyed. Her clothes were torn. Her personal items were smashed. Her data pad was cracked in half. On the wall, someone had carved words in the Vorax combat language. She did not speak Vorax, but she knew what the message meant. Tomorrow. They were coming for her tomorrow. Lyra stood in the middle of the wreckage. She looked at the destruction around her. She looked at the message on the wall. Then she started to laugh. It was not a happy laugh. It was the laugh of someone who had been holding back for a very long time and had finally decided to stop. For 6 months, she had played the diplomat. She had been the peaceful representative of her species. She had taken every hit and smiled through the pain, but they had not sent her here because she was diplomatic. The Earth Defense Force had thousands of officers who could smile and shake hands and make friends with aliens. They had chosen Lyra Chen for a different reason. They had chosen her because of the things in her classified file. They had chosen her because of the missions that officially never happened. They had chosen her because when humanity needed something destroyed, she was the one they called. Lyra stopped laughing. She looked at her reflection in the cracked screen of her data pad. Her dark eyes were calm and cold. "Okay," she said quietly. "You want to do this? Let's do this." She did not sleep that night. She sat in the darkness and waited for dawn. When the sun rose over the academy, Commander Lyra Chen was ready. She walked out of her quarters with empty hands and a steady heartbeat. She knew where they would be waiting. She knew what they planned to do. She knew that the entire academy would be watching. Good. She wanted them to watch. She wanted them all to see what happened when you pushed a human too far. The central plaza of the academy was a vast open space surrounded by tall buildings on all sides. Thousands of students passed through it every day. It was the heart of the academy, the place where everyone could see and be seen. That was why the Apex Circle had chosen it. When Lyra walked into the plaza that morning, she found them waiting for her. 7 of the deadliest cadets in the known galaxy stood in a half circle at the center of the stone floor. Behind them, hundreds of other students had gathered to watch. More watched from windows and balconies above. News traveled fast at the academy. Everyone knew what was about to happen. Tharn Varelic stood at the center of the group. His red exoskeleton gleamed in the morning light. His forearms were relaxed at his sides, but his compound eyes burned with hatred. To his left stood Kira Vex, the Kethali champion. Her poisoned spines were fully extended, dripping with venom that could stop a heart in seconds. To his right floated Zin, a Sindari telepath whose mental attacks had driven 3 previous opponents into permanent madness. Behind them stood for more, a Dracorian with scales like black steel, a Marathi whose body was covered in razor-sharp bone plates, a Teth warrior whose forelegs could move faster than the eye could follow, and a Kron whose massive size and strength had earned him the name the Mountain. 7 apex predators from 7 civilizations that had conquered entire star systems against 1 human. Lyra walked toward them with steady steps. She set her bag down at the edge of the plaza. She did not look at the crowd. She kept her eyes on Tharn. Human, Tharn said. His voice echoed across the silent plaza. You were warned. You were given chances to leave. You were shown mercy that you did not deserve. Now you will face justice. Lyra stopped 10 feet in front of him. She looked at each member of the Apex Circle in turn. She saw their confidence. She saw their contempt. She saw how certain they were that this would end with her broken on the ground. Justice. She said, "Is that what you call 7 warriors attacking 1 person? You are not a person," Kira hissed. "You are prey that forgot its place." Tharn raised one of his arms. "You will kneel before your superiors, human. You will beg for forgiveness, and then we will teach you what happens to species that do not know their place in the natural order." Lyra took a deep breath. She felt her heart beating strong and steady in her chest. She felt the adrenaline starting to flow through her blood. She felt something ancient waking up inside her, something that had kept her ancestors alive through ice ages and wars and disasters that would have destroyed any other species. "I am going to ask this once," she said. Her voice was calm and clear, carrying across the plaza to every watching ear. "Do you all want this smoke?" Tharn's mandibles clicked with confusion. "What? It is a human expression," Lyra said. "It means, are you sure you want to fight me? All of you? Right now?" Laughter rippled through the Apex Circle. The Kron rumbled something in his own language that made the others laugh harder. "Stupid mammal." Tharn said, "You face the 7 deadliest warriors in this academy. You have no armor. You have no weapons. You have nothing but soft skin and weak bones. What do you think you can possibly do?" Lyra smiled. It was not a friendly smile. "I think I am going to hurt you," she said. "I think I am going to hurt all of you. And I think you are going to remember this day for the rest of your lives." Tharn roared and charged. He was fast, faster than anything his size should be. His forearms reached out to grab her, to crush her, to break her in half. Lyra moved, not away from him, toward him. She ducked under his first grab and drove her fist into the soft joint where his arm met his shoulder. She hit it with everything she had. She felt the joint crack. Tharn screamed and his arm went limp. She did not stop. She used his momentum against him, spinning around his body and slamming her elbow into the back of his leg. He stumbled. She grabbed his damaged arm and pulled, using her whole body as a lever. The joint tore completely. The arm hung useless. 3 seconds. One arm disabled. The others attacked. Kira came at her with her poisoned spines leading. Lyra grabbed a handful of dirt from the plaza floor and threw it into the Kethali's eyes. Kira hissed and stumbled. Lyra kicked her legs out from under her and stomped on her spine cluster before she could rise. The spines broke. Kira screamed as her own venom leaked onto her skin. The Teth warrior moved in from the side, his forelegs blurring with speed. Lyra dropped flat and rolled. His claws passed over her head close enough to cut hair. She came up inside his guard and drove her fingers into his eyes. He fell back, blinded and howling. Then the Sindari attacked her mind. It was like a hammer made of pure thought slamming into her skull. For one terrible moment, Lyra felt herself falling into darkness. She felt the alien presence trying to crush her consciousness, to shatter her thoughts, to destroy who she was. But Zin had never been inside a human mind before. The aliens thought humans were simple. They thought human minds were quiet and peaceful. They were wrong. Inside Lyra's head was 200,000 years of survival. Inside her head was the memory of every war, every plague, every extinction event that humanity had survived. Inside her head was the fury of a species that had clawed its way to the top of the food chain on a planet, that had tried to kill it every single day. Zin touched that fury and recoiled screaming. The Cindery's body flickered and fell from the air, unconscious, before it hit the ground. Lyra turned to face the others. Blood ran from her nose where the mental attack had ruptured small vessels. She did not care. The Dracorian and the Maraudi came at her together. She caught the Dracorian's fist and twisted, using his own strength to swing him into the Maraudi. They crashed together in a tangle of scales and bone plates. She was on them before they could recover, striking at vulnerable points with precision that came from studying their anatomies. For 3 days without sleep, the Kron grabbed her from behind. His massive arms wrapped around her chest. She felt ribs crack. She could not breathe. She was going to die. Her vision went red. Lyra threw her head back with every ounce of strength she had. Her skull connected with the Kron's face. Cartilage shattered. The Kron's grip loosened. She twisted free and spun, driving her knee into the nerve cluster in his lower abdomen. The Kron fell like a mountain collapsing. Tharn was getting back up, his 3 remaining arms reaching for her. Lyra met him head-on. They traded blows that would have killed normal humans. Her left arm broke when she blocked one of his strikes. She kept fighting. She used her broken arm as a weapon, swinging it into his face. She hit him in the throat with her good hand. She hit him in the eyes. She grabbed one of his antennae and pulled until it tore free. Tharn fell to his knees, choking. Bleeding, broken, Lyra stood over him, breathing hard. Her left arm hung at a terrible angle. Blood covered her face and hands. 3 of her ribs were broken. One eye was swelling shut, but she was standing. Round her, 7 of the deadliest warriors in the galaxy lay scattered across the plaza stones. Some were unconscious. Some were crying out in pain. All of them were beaten. The watching crowd was absolutely silent. Lyra looked down at Tharn. The Vorax heir was trying to speak, but only blood came out of his mouth. "On Earth," she said. Her voice rough but clear. "We have a saying. It goes, mess around and find out." She looked up at the crowd, at the hundreds of aliens who had come to watch a human get destroyed. She saw their shock. She saw their fear. She saw something new in their eyes. Respect. You all wanted to know if humans belong here. She said, "Now you know." Then her legs gave out, and she collapsed next to her enemies. She was smiling when she hit the ground. Lyra woke up in the medical wing 3 days later. The room was white and clean and filled with machines she did not recognize. A soft beeping sound came from somewhere near her head. Her entire body felt like one giant bruise. She tried to move her left arm and found it wrapped in some kind of healing cast. The bones were being rebuilt by alien technology far more advanced than anything on Earth. According to the readout next to her bed, she would have full use of the arm into weeks. A nurse came in when she stirred. It was a small creature with gray skin and gentle eyes. The same species as the registration clerk, Lyra realized. "You are awake," the nurse said. "Good, you have visitors." Before Lyra could respond, the door opened and 3 figures walked in. The first was High Commander Jexa, the ancient Kethali who had led the Academy for 200 years. Her blue skin was pale with age, and her poison spines had long since stopped producing venom. But her eyes were still sharp and cold. The second was Ambassador Reyes, the human diplomatic representative to the Galactic Conclave. He was a tall man with gray hair and a face that showed nothing of what he was thinking. The third was a holographic projection of someone Lyra recognized immediately. Admiral Chen, her mother, commander of the Earth Defense Force, and the reason Lyra had joined the military in the first place. "Commander Chen," Jexa said, "you have created quite a situation." Lyra tried to sit up. Pain shot through her ribs and she fell back with a grunt. "Stay still," the nurse said firmly. "What kind of situation?" Lyra asked. Ambassador Reyes stepped forward. His face was calm, but Lyra could see tension in his shoulders. 7 heirs to major galactic powers are in medical facilities across this station. 3 of them nearly died. Their families are demanding justice. Justice? Lyra felt anger rising in her chest. They attacked me. They have been trying to kill me for months. Every accident, every poisoning, every piece of sabotaged equipment was their doing. We know. Jeksa said. We have reviewed all available evidence, including evidence that our instructors chose to ignore. The old HFY's voice carried a sharp edge of disappointment, not at Lyra, but at her own staff. The Vorax Dominion is demanding your immediate expulsion and imprisonment, Reyes continued. The HFY Collective wants you tried for assault against a noble daughter. The Sindari Communion claims you committed a mental attack against one of their protected citizens. And what does Earth say? Lyra asked. She looked at the hologram of her mother. Admiral Chen's expression did not change. Earth says that our officer defended herself against a coordinated attack by multiple hostile parties. Earth says that if the Academy cannot protect our people, we will find other ways to earn our place in the galaxy. There was steel in her mother's voice. Lyra had heard that steel before, usually right before someone made a very bad mistake. Jeksa raised one withered hand. Before we discuss responses, let us discuss facts. I have watched the recording of the incident 17 times. I have studied it with tactical experts from First Species. I would like to share what we found. She touched a control on her wrist and a holographic display appeared in the center of the room. It showed the plaza. It showed the fight. The human female was approached by 7 armed cadets who had publicly declared their intention to harm her. When given the option to submit, she instead asked if they wished to engage in combat. Jeksa's spines rustled. A curious phrase. Do you all want this smoke? I have been told this is a challenge. It is, Lyra said. The Vorax male attacked first. At no point did the human female strike without being struck first, or while an opponent was attempting to surrender. She used no weapons. She broke no rules. Jeksa paused the recording at the moment Lyra stood over the fallen warriors. In 4 minutes and 23 seconds, a single human defeated 7 apex predators in close combat. She suffered a broken arm, 4 broken ribs, internal bleeding, and a moderate concussion, injuries that would have killed or permanently disabled most species. The old HFY turned to look at Lyra with something strange in her ancient eyes. You were standing at the end. You were smiling. I was having a good time, Lyra said. Ambassador Reyes made a small choking sound. Admiral Chen's hologram flickered with what might have been a suppressed laugh. Jeksa was silent for a long moment. Then she did something Lyra did not expect. The old HFY commander bowed her head. I have led this academy for 200 years. I have trained warriors from 60 species. I thought I understood what it meant to be a predator. I thought I understood strength. She raised her head and looked at Lyra directly. I was wrong. Humanity is not a soft species from a gentle world. You are something we have not seen before. Something we did not recognize because it did not look like what we expected. What did you see? Lyra asked. I saw a creature that refuses to die. I saw a species that has been fighting for survival since the moment it evolved. I saw something that my people would call a nightmare if we met it in the dark. The room was very quiet. The tribunal will rule in your favor, Jeksa continued. The Apex Circle attacked first. They planned the assault. They have been documented harassing you for months. They broke our laws and our traditions. You simply survived. She turned to leave, then stopped at the door. The Vorax and HFY will protest. They will threaten to withdraw from the academy, but they will not follow through. Do you know why? Lyra shook her head. Because they are afraid. For the first time in 10,000 years, they have seen something that makes them afraid, and they want to understand it before they turn away from it. Jeksa left. Ambassador Reyes followed, giving Lyra a small nod of respect as he passed. Only the hologram of Admiral Chen remained. Mother and daughter looked at each other in silence for a long moment. You could have died. Admiral Chen said finally, I know. Was it worth it? Lyra thought about the question. She thought about the months of abuse. She thought about the sabotage and the poison and the hatred. She thought about the look in Tharn's eyes when he told her she did not belong. Then she thought about the look in Jeksa's eyes when she called humanity a nightmare. Yes, she said. It was worth it. Admiral Chen nodded slowly. The recording has been transmitted across the galactic network. Every species with access to communications has seen it. Human applications to military academies have increased by 3,000%. In the last 48 hours, Lyra blinked. 3,000%. Humanity has been waiting for this moment, her mother said. We have been waiting for someone to show the galaxy what we really are. You did that, Lyra. You showed them. The hologram began to fade as the connection ended. Rest now, Admiral Chen said. Heal when you return to training. The galaxy will be watching. Show them that what they saw was not a fluke. Show them that every human is capable of what you did. And if they come after me again. Admiral Chen smiled. It was the same smile Lyra had worn when she stood over her defeated enemies. Then show them again. The hologram disappeared. Lyra lay back on her medical bed and stared at the ceiling. Her body hurt. Her mind was tired. But somewhere deep inside her chest, she felt something warm and bright. Pride. Not just in herself, but in her species. In everything humanity had survived to reach this moment. The galaxy knew about humans now. The galaxy understood. And this was only the beginning. 10 years had passed since the day in the plaza. Commander Lyra Chen stood on the bridge of the EDS Perseverance, the newest and most powerful ship in humanity's interstellar fleet. Through the viewing windows, she could see the blue and green planet of Nexus Prime far below. The Galactic Apex Academy was down there somewhere, still training warriors, still shaping the future of the galaxy. But the galaxy had changed. Lyra was no longer a commander. The insignia on her collar showed her new rank, Admiral. At 42 years old, she was the youngest flag officer in Earth's history and the first human to command a multinational galactic task force, Admiral. The Vorax delegation has arrived, said her tactical officer. General Varelic is requesting permission to come aboard. Lyra smiled at the name. Permission granted. I will meet him in the conference room. She walked through the corridors of her ship, passing crew members from a dozen different species. There were humans, of course, but there were also Cathali, Marathi, and even a few Sindari. The ship was a symbol of everything that had changed since that day in the plaza. The conference room doors opened and Lyra stepped inside. Tharn Varelic stood at the window, looking out at the stars. He had changed since their fight. The arm she had destroyed had been regrown, but it was slightly different in color than his others. A permanent reminder. His compound eyes were calmer now, touched with something that might have been wisdom. Admiral Chen, he said, turning to face her. Thank you for seeing me, General Varelic. Lyra nodded. It has been a long time. They stood in silence for a moment. Two warriors who had once tried to destroy each other and had found something else instead. I received your message after the Battle of Kethris Prime, Tharn said finally. I wanted to respond in person. The Battle of Kethris Prime, 3 months ago. A hostile force called the Void Swarm had emerged from unknown space and attacked a joint colony. The defenses had been overwhelmed. Evacuation seemed impossible. Then the human Marines arrived. They held a defensive line for 18 hours against creatures that felt no pain and knew no fear. They fought in shifts, eating and sleeping in 3-hour rotations, never letting the line break. When their ammunition ran out, they fought with knives and fists. When their knives broke, they fought with rocks and pieces of debris. The Void Swarm had never faced anything like them. The swarm did not understand a species that would not retreat, would not surrender, would not stop fighting even when logic demanded it. By the time reinforcements arrived, the human Marines had killed over 3,000 swarm creatures. They had lost 42 of their own. Every single colonist survived. Your soldiers saved my daughter, Tharn said. His voice was rough with emotion. She was on that colony. She was in the evacuation zone when the swarm broke through the third barrier. A human sergeant picked her up and carried her to safety while fighting off attackers with one hand. Sergeant Morrison, Lyra said. She received a medal for that action. She received more than a medal from my family. Tharn reached into his belt and pulled out something small and metallic. He held it out to Lyra. This is the Star of Vorax. It is the highest honor my people can give to an outsider. In 10,000 years, we have given it exactly 4 times. Lyra took the medal. It was heavier than it looked, made of some dark metal that seemed to absorb light. I am giving it to you, Tharn continued. Not for Kethris Prime, for what you did 10 years ago. Lyra looked up at him in surprise. I hated you, Tharn said. After you defeated me, I hated you more than I had ever hated anything. I told myself it was a trick. I told myself you had cheated somehow. I spent years believing that humans were still beneath us. He paused and looked out at the stars. Then I watched your species. I watched how you built your fleet from nothing. I watched how you integrated with other species. How you formed bonds and alliances that should have been impossible. I watched how you fought at Kethris Prime and a dozen other battles. He turned back to face her. And I understood. You did not cheat that day in the plaza. You were simply what you are. A species forged in fire, built to survive anything, unable to accept defeat. I was wrong about humans, Admiral Chen. I was wrong about you. Lyra held the metal in her hand and felt its weight. She thought about all the years since that day in the plaza. She thought about the changes she had seen. Humans were everywhere now. They served on ships of every species. They worked in governments and academies across the galaxy. They had earned their place not through diplomacy or politics, but through blood and sacrifice and stubborn refusal to give up. What I did that day was not special, Lyra said finally. Any human would have done the same. Tharn nodded slowly. Yes, that is what makes your species terrifying. They shared a moment of understanding. Two warriors who had learned to respect each other through combat. The Conclave is meeting next month, Tharn said. They are going to vote on whether to give humanity a permanent seat on the Security Council. I know, the Vorax Dominion will vote yes. Tharn met her eyes. We were the first to oppose humans joining the galactic community. Now we will be the first to welcome you as equals. After Tharn left, Lyra stood alone in the conference room for a long time. She looked out at the stars and thought about everything that had led to this moment. She thought about a young woman walking through the gates of the academy with nothing but a small bag and a stubborn heart. She thought about months of abuse and sabotage. She thought about a morning in the plaza when she had asked 7 predators if they wanted this smoke. She had given humanity a chance. She had shown the galaxy what her species was capable of. But it was not her victory alone. It was the victory of every human who had come before her. Every ancestor who had survived ice ages and plagues and wars. Every person who had refused to give up when the world told them to lie down and die. Humans were not the strongest species in the galaxy. They were not the fastest or the smartest or the most advanced. But they had something the other species were only beginning to understand. They had the fire that had carried them from caves to cities to stars. The fire that made them keep fighting when all hope was lost. The fire that burned in Lyra's chest as she looked out at the endless darkness of space and saw not emptiness, but possibility. The galaxy had asked if humans belonged among the stars. 10 years ago, she had given them the answer. Now the entire galaxy knew. Humans were here. Humans were staying. And anyone who wanted to test that fact was welcome to try. Lyra smiled and touched the Vorax metal in her pocket. The void swarm was still out there somewhere. Other threats would emerge. The universe was vast and full of dangers that would challenge even humanity's determination. She found herself looking forward to it. After all, humans had never backed down from a challenge. Not once in 200,000 years of evolution. Not once in all their bloody, glorious history. And they were not about to start now. Admiral Lyra Chen turned away from the window and walked back to her bridge. There was work to be done. There were stars to explore. There was a legacy to build, and she would not waste a single moment of it.